our first Q&A at 24 hours. It is 9 p.m. You are now 5 hours into this contest. Hopefully you're all moving strong, doing well, keeping each other healthy and happy. I am here with the wonderful, amazing animation director, producer, animator, designer extraordinaire, Michael Roberts. How you doing, Mike?
Doing great. Am I really the first one? That's a lot of pressure.
No pressure, no pressure. It just means you have to be the best.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
Mike, you've been around for a little while with the 24-hour animation contest, at least.
That's true, yeah.
I think you've probably visited us in person and virtually probably every year for at least the last 8 years, maybe.
Yeah, what happened last year? I can't remember. Did I come by last year?
I think you ignored my phone calls, but I'm not sure why.
Well, not this year.
Not this year. You answered. Thank goodness. Mike, why don't you tell the group here what you've been working on lately and a little bit about your history?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of what people would have. I started out at Wexford, which you said there's a team from Wexford Collegiate in Scarborough. I sent an email out to see if I could help with those guys. I never heard back, so I just assume it went into like the whole of the email addresses that like general emails go to, or they didn't want any help. And went to Sheridan College, same as Aubrey. From there, I worked in Toronto for a while. I worked at William Shatner's Core Digital Pictures for a little while, and then moved to LA. Did a short film. I'm trying to think of things that people would have seen. Bojack Horseman. I did the opening titles for Bojack Horseman. Worked on season 1 of Final Space. And now I'm producing a show at Mattel.
And, I mean, you know, for the Canadians in the group, at least would know, and probably more people, Mike has been referred to as the fifth Sadie, as he was the main animator designer of their music videos. Mike, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I did a short film. Well, I called it a short film, but it was more like an extended music video for the Sadies in, 2011, I think. And it was kind of interesting because it definitely was conceived as a short film, but turned into a music video that won a Juno, and then weirdly enough got a Vimeo staff pick, which then got me a manager who said, move to LA and I'll be your manager. So it's kind of a funny thing. So I owe those guys. Dallas, the lead singer, passed away a little while ago, and we miss him. And but I owe him my career in some ways, because that music video was the thing that got me to LA. So
beautiful. So for everyone listening, this is a good time. I have some questions lined up, but this is a good time if you want to post some questions for Mike Roberts. We're happy to answer them and get you started further down your next portion of the films. So, Mike.
Yes.
What motivates you to be productive when you have when you have a tight deadline?
We have a tight deadline. What motivates you, or what actually gets you moving? Motivation. You know what I do to motivate myself is like figure out like some kind of thing that makes you sit in the chair, like a movie. I like to put on a movie I've seen 50 times. I think is a really great way to kind of go, all right, I'm going to sit in this chair for 2 hours and not pay attention to that movie while I work. Podcasts. Yeah. But it has to be something you don't have to pay attention to. So you can't put on like a Wong Kar-wai film. You got to put on like Mission Impossible 6, like for the 12th time.
No insult to Mission Impossible 6 people.
No, that's genuinely one of my favorite movies. It's just
that's not Brad Bird's, is it?
No, I like that one too, but it isn't my favorite. I like the Christopher McQuarrie ones.
Oh, Christopher.
But no, I think that's a really hard question because as I get through my career, I'm doing more little stuff as well as like a job, and then little jobs like consulting and all this kind of stuff. And it's really hard to like organize because if you have 10 things, it all just bottlenecks and then you don't do any of them, which is so bad. So the secret is to go like one step at a time, and doing some portion of it, no matter where it is going to get you a little further. And I think that's the hardest part, is like how you organize. When you have 10 things to do, how do you pick one? And then you get into a stalemate with your brain, and that's how you get really in trouble. But
I mean, do you look at kind of deadlines to help prioritize? Like
for sure, I hate jobs that are like 6 months out. Like I need I really the more I get into my career, the more I value line producers because they are the ones and production managers and PAs because they're the ones who keep an eye on flaky, airheaded artists and make them actually do the job. Like without without line producers and production managers, you just have there'd be no industry. It'd just everybody be drawing the same background for 3 weeks. You get it perfect. 3 months, 3 years.
But I've known you for a little while, and I've never known you to kind of be stagnant. You're always working on something, and even when there's not a job, from what I know about you, you work on your reel or you work on shots that you might propose into something else. How do you, when there's 1,000 things to watch, say on Netflix, or gaming, how do you stop yourself from that stuff and just focus on your own stuff?
Well, that's why I think like kind of giving yourself permission to just have the TV on or a movie on all the time, is actually kind of helpful. Like if you kind of don't make that your focus, like I actually am really bad for, and this, I don't know if this advice works for everybody, but I'm not somebody who sits down and watches a movie unless it's really special, So I like having stuff on in the background, and then it's like going to a music show or watching a movie just gives you all these ideas. So you kind of you get inspiration from watching the movies. I think that's what it is. Like, I think if you get in the habit of trying to kind of, especially as an artist or an animator, like recreate the things that you like, it gets you out of the habit of being a consumer only and trying to produce. Because I get a lot of anxiety from seeing stuff I really like, because I'm like, oh, how would I represent that in animation, or a drawing or whatever, And I think that helps. Yeah. And then thinking like that, I think helps when it's your turn to make something, because you're like, I've thought about this. Like, for example, I'm working on this show right now. I think I can talk about it. It's a Hot Wheels show. I think I can say that. And if I can't, I take it back. I've been thinking about car stuff for years, So I feel like I have this like library of stuff that and that's not just cars, but I have a library of stuff that I've been thinking about. And I think that's really important for animators and artists to kind of be really practicing. How would I do that if I ever had to, and you have to be general because it gets specific, but I don't know if that answers your question, but.
No, it does. So, you're almost, it's like, do you remember Short Circuit, the movie with the robot?
Yeah, a lot.
Data, and just taking.
Yeah.
So it's like you're watching a movie, not necessarily to get caught up in the story and the background, but you're kind of a library catalog where you're taking in the tone, you're taking in shots, you're taking in all sorts of different information.
Yeah, people. I mean, like more than one storyboard artist has made fun of me because they call me the guy who like wants to make the cartoon they're making 2001. Like I'll reference a shot from like a Kubrick film when we're doing, popsicle stick head characters, and they laugh. But at the same time, it's like, well, it's really easy to crib composition off of people who are geniuses like that, Totally. It makes life faster to have a library of compositions in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so these students are all competing right now in a 24-hour animation contest around the world. So if you could say one thing to them that it's going to ignite them or put a light bulb above their head right now, what would it be?
Plan first. Make sure. So I the only time I've ever seen things fall apart is when you can't lock an animatic. And I think a locked animatic is better than an unfinished film. So like, I'd rather see an amazing, I'm sure you won't agree with me maybe on this for the boundaries of the test of the contest, but as a viewer, you're going to enjoy a really tight, awesome animatic more than broken animation. So like, and by that I mean don't just aim for a finished animatic, but if you can finish an animatic, you'll have a blueprint that will make a good film.
Yeah, you're right. Because at least if the story's solid, the timing's solid, all the shots are good, you've got a way to carry someone through from beginning to end, and then everything you're adding on top of it is just, additional plussing.
Yeah, well, whenever I look at a design or a board or I'm giving notes or I'm consulting on something, I always think, could the person who's got to work on this at 3 a.m. on a deadline open it up and just get to work, you know? And I think like when you're right now, if you're whatever you said, 4 hours in, you're 4 hours in, all the creative energy, got lots of coffee, full of sugar and donuts, and then you've got, I'd say, 10 hours of like peak productivity. And then you have to have it go on progressively more remote control from there. And then maybe you have a flurry of editing at the end, but you're almost doing like the whole production in one night. So you have to think of it in those terms. Planning, good planning while you're fresh, and then hopefully the rest of it can drive itself a little bit when you start to burn out, which will happen, but that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of freshmen, even though we weren't speaking of freshmen, here's a question from one freshman. Give them advice when they have 24 hours to make a 30-second film with next to no in-class experience. I don't know if that means animation experience or what.
Advice for, okay. Pick an animation style or some kind of style of something that you've done before or that you think you can do, because this is the time to repeat something you're comfortable with. It's probably not the time to like try something. It's not the first time. This isn't the night you learn how to stop motion animate. You know, I think it's something that you've done, something that you feel comfortable with, drawing a style you're used to drawing. Does that sound right? I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Great.
I think it's because like I said, like okay, well here, I'll say another way. The worst animation I've ever seen, if it's funny, is better than the best animation I've ever seen with a bad story.
Yeah.
So like do you remember that it was, I guess it was the early days of viral video, and the guy's like, my spoon is too big. Do you remember those ones? And it was just like a pencil outline and a guy holding a big spoon. He literally said, my spoon is too big. Academy Award. You know, if it's funny, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Someone's
I mean, that goes back to what you were saying about nailing down the structure in the beginning. It's like everything else can work, but if you play to the strength of, say, even limited animation, if you're not trying to make it look like it's feature, you know, you're not hiding.
Exactly. No, I mean, listen, aesthetic matters. You know, things have to look, and like there's a win out of things looking good, but there are plenty of, you know, mediocre animated films that look amazing, you know, and then there's plenty of like, you know, Toy Story 1 holds up because of the story, even though it's pretty shockingly old-fashioned to look at it now. It looks like a tech demo. It looks like the CD ROM they used to give you with like a video card.
Yeah, totally. But it holds up, and it'll still bring you to tears.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from a high school student, maybe a Woburn student, maybe it's a Wexford.
Oh, Woburn too. That might.
These are all my class. My father worked at both of them, so I get them confused.
Yeah.
Probably Wexford.
My sister went to Moet.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Yeah, whatever. It's East Scarborough.
Okay, what is your advice for a team of seniors in high school? So, high school.
I mean, I was, well, you know, I'm going to speak about Wexford, but like Wexford was like an art immersion high school. We had a lot of access to stuff, but I went to Wexford after having like a 7th grade or an 8th grade, I think 7th and 8th grade teacher who was super into like media and really pushed all the boundaries of like she bought like a camera and a little, whatever you call it, back in the day it was VHS, like a little button that you could push to like take single stills. So she bought us a bunch of clay and taught us to not taught us, but encouraged us to do stop motion and all kinds of animation stuff. And the reason I say that is because like I'm sure that if, you know, at some point if you're in an animation challenge, you know, if you're doing an 24 animation challenge in high school, you're interested in animation. So I think the advice is, again, like figure out something that you wanted to make or you've thought about making and like make the best version of it. You know, like think about something that makes you feel excited to make now so that it'll still be exciting to make in 4 hours. When there's 4 hours left to go. Because you don't want to be in the position where you're like not half into an idea and then, you know, your group's kind of like, you know, it's got to be something that everyone is excited about. Oh, that's another thing. You ever hear what's the expression? the best idea doesn't always win, but the idea that everyone agrees on will win. So like, it's like figuring out how to work with your team is the only way to do it. So, don't be too precious about an idea. You want something that everyone can get excited about.
Yeah, especially when it comes down to the 10th hour and everyone's just so beat and so tired. If they're not motivated to produce that last background or the last few in-betweens, it's a tough ride home.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is like there's lots of, I bet, like you could go onto like a lot of websites, like AI websites, and like build artwork for this thing. Like there's lots of tools right now that actually make the 24-hour to like kind of not easy, but a lot more attainable, right? Like you could go into like a Google AI and type in the backgrounds you need. Now they're not going to do that.
But don't.
Oh, is that not in the rules? Is that wait? Am I like,
You're supposed to do things from scratch here.
So where's the boundary though? Like, is it scratch to use like an armature in like a 3D program or something, or like Moho or?
I think there could be an argument for if you're building it. Like, take that example. You're building a armature. It's like you've got a few things in a computer program that's going to help you build something. So that's not really, you're not like coding to start from scratch. So the stop motion version would be, that's the armature. You can have an armature to start with.
Yeah, because when I say like I'll say this as well. Like if you got the AI to make your scene, that's a fail. Because like this is the whole thing. Like everyone's been talking lately. We don't need artists anymore because they have these AIs. It's like the ugliest shit ever, right? Like it's terrible. So like there's no one's ever gone, oh my God, what a beautiful AI. I can't believe it. It's so much better than what anyone else does. It's just amazing that the tool can do the thing, right? Yeah. So I would say like for example, I found this awesome program called EB-Synth. Have you seen this? Mm-hmm. Oh my God, it's so cool. Okay, so like you take a video or anything, animation, and you trace it, like rotoscope a painting over top, right? It will use AI and machine learning to like apply the painting to every frame. So now you have this like photorealistic movement with a painted overlook, and you do like every like sixth key. Mm-hmm. But anyone who does it is going to maybe it'll look like dog shit, right? But if you do it right, it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. Yep. Or you can so what you can do is like animate a scene and then paint over your compositing and apply it to the animation, which is really, really cool.
Wow.
So that's where the AI is like the most helpful thing ever, right? But am I worried about it taking over for artists? No. So back to what I was saying originally, you can use all these tools to build your elements.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and then the human person has to human it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just a tool. I mean, they were worried about that when in the late 90s when computer animation started. When we did Final Fantasy, it was like, we have the tools that could in between.
Yeah.
But it looked like,
Yeah, exactly.
Bad in between. So you still have to control every frame ultimately.
Sure. That's like if you look at She-Hulk, a lot of the animation in She-Hulk is motion capture, but it still looks like badly animated. Because, like it's not cleaned up properly. Some of it looks great, but it's just not cleaned up properly across the board because they're rushing and whatever. You need that eye. Taste is the job.
Taste does the job. We have a question about, I'm not quite sure what this question is, Ben. Can we use authorial photos as assets in our animation? Like pixelation? Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with that because you're still manipulating frame by frame, right? So if you want to slide across a floor and take pictures, I mean, put it this way, if Norman McLaren can do it, call it animation, it's definitely animation.
Yeah, like shooting photo plates for an animation would look awesome. I do that all the time. I love that stuff. There's some on my Instagram where it's like two guys like fighting on like a cut lemon. There's like a heavy little laser gun battle. I love that stuff.
Yeah, tell the student Ben to watch Neighbors by Norman McLaren.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a great example of using pixelation, but then taking it to the next level. Like when they start getting all crazy with the makeup and the backgrounds changing. You just have to be super inventive with it so that it doesn't just look like you stood there with a camera. I think you're pushing the medium somewhere.
Yeah, people always have a sixth sense for the effort you put in.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes like part of the reason that sometimes those big art installations might just be a giant red wall, but it's still amazing to see a 60-foot red wall. It doesn't mean there's no art involved,
Right.
you know, but you can tell when something took effort.
Yeah. 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 Like Christo's
Yeah, Crystal's the perfect example of that.
fabric through the farmlands. Just
Yeah, everyone's like, oh, just wrap it up. It's like, yeah, but
you
What
come up with that
Yeah,
idea and then
exactly.
execute it. Yeah. There's actually a great documentary of that where has to meet with all these farmers because he's going through their land and had to get permission.
right.
The people that didn't necessarily know the art world, and it was great because he kind of turned everyone around to say, yeah, we understand why you're doing this.
Right.
Beautiful.
With speaking of Wexford, my sculpture teacher, Mrs. Burke, in like whatever, she was obsessed with Christo. Yeah, absolutely, all the time. She introduced me to Christo, and who's the other guy?
With the
glass. Who's the glass?
spiral jetty.
Yeah, he does those crazy like flowers made out of glass, but they're like 12 feet across. Oh God, what's his name? I want to say Christo. No, that's the other guy. Anyway, whatever. He's amazing.
Glasso.
Shoot. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up.
All right, while you're looking it up, I'll tell you my Wexford story that I told the group. My father was head of advising there from 1972 to 1975, and they just broke ground for the arts program when he was there.
Oh wow, there you go. See,
Isn't that
that's cool. I benefited from that very much.
Yeah, well,
see, Aubrey, you were a friend even before you existed.
Oh, one big circle.
Wait, hold on. The glass.
All right. I'm going to ask you another. Can you multitask? Can I ask you another question?
Chuli. Yeah, totally. It's Chuli. I knew
Chuli.
it. There we go. It's awesome stuff.
Not to be confused with the fragrant smell patchouli.
Right. Or Han Solo's pal.
Or what?
Chewie. Han Solo's pal Chewie.
Chewie.
That's all.
Okay, here's a question. Clarity versus narrative ambiguity. What can be achieved in a 30-second film within 24 hours? Good question.
Well, that is a good. I mean, every scene is a 30-second film, right? If you want to think of it like that. So you have to pick something that's appropriate for the time you've got. So like a chase, fantastic for 30 seconds. Or, you know, a reveal is good. Like I think we probably talked about this in previous years. From someone who's judged a few rounds, they tend to be either the options, and the majority of the films either tend to be incredibly like maudlin, like very intense, dark stories about love and loss and all this kind of stuff, which it can work for sure. But there isn't often the time to build up to earn it, as they say, you know, like how do you earn the moment in 30 seconds? So now you have to think about dealing in tropes, like a father and a child is something you can immediately get, or a mother and mother obviously or a child. I'm saying it from my perspective. So you have to start dealing in tropes so that you're starting your 30 seconds with audience information, right? Like if you see a car, you know it's a car, but if you start with an alien spaceship, you have to tell everyone what that is. So 30 seconds is about creating the context that you have to tell your story, knowing the time. You have to work within the time limit to show the context enough to understand the story. So what I'm trying to say is like, that's why I think the most successful films are often jokes. So you get a setup and a punchline, 30 seconds. That's enough time to do that. Think about TV commercials. TV commercials are, usually pretty brilliant in telling a story in 30 seconds. So has a topic been broached in a commercial that you've seen? That's another great way to kind of guess your timing. Like, have you seen someone do this story quickly before? You're not gonna build a character up and tear them down in 30 seconds unless you really, really are careful with your moments. Like you could do a 30-second film where all you did was draw 30 different versions of a character going through an experience, right? And you go, I guess each one would be 1 second, so you get a flash, 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 and think of how much information you could tell, like getting dirtier, clothes getting ripped, like wind blown, right? Like what's happening in that time. And in 30 seconds, you could tell a week-long story of someone taking a picture of themselves every day and make jokes about what they're in, and they're covered in mud in one photo. I know I'm kind of rambling here, but I mean, like, the 30 seconds is all about how you deliver the information.
Yeah, I mean, I think the joke at least has a structure where it's a setup and it's a delivery with the punchline.
Yeah.
And you get your emotional impact. However, I will say, to counter you for a second, is that the few films that have found an effective way not to do comedy,
right,
I think could be, if not as powerful, even more powerful. But it's hard to do.
Yeah, I don't want to argue. I don't disagree at all. I completely agree. I'm saying that a joke is a structure you understand in 30 seconds.
Exactly.
So, intense, thought, like what you're saying, like a dramatic story is something that's much more difficult to tell in 30 seconds unless you're like very carefully crafting it. Because everyone, I think, in their head knows a joke that's about 30 seconds.
Absolutely. And that's really all you have time for in this. It's just like a quick setup and a punchline. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, that's why you could do the non-joke version is two people are driving in a car, starting a conversation. Just as the conversation gets intense, they get hit by another car. Right? That's the setup and payoff of a joke. It's an unexpected surprise at the end of a moment. So you could say that's a joke, but it's a gag, right? But it's not funny. So I guess what I mean to say is like action can be humor and drama can be humor because you're just subverting the expectation. Right. So I think if you start with the structure of a joke, then you get what you can do in 30 seconds. And then you don't have to tell a joke, right? Because I agree with you. I agree completely that to imply that you can't do it to a dramatic, successful 30 seconds is totally wrong. Yeah. So yeah, but I think the joke is a good template.
Yeah, for sure. And there seems to be one more question about getting into concept art for film and games. Maybe advice.
Oh, on how to do the job, or how to get it.
How to get your foot in the door? Maybe, I'm not sure.
Well, it's tough, right? Because like there's a real easy answer. Let's just have a killer portfolio, right? And then people will hire you no matter what. And if you look like you've done the job before, then they know that you can do it. I think there's two things you look for: the talent, right? And then the can you do it? So I know lots of artists who may not be like what you would consider like the most, visually spectacular artists, but they can do the job. And that it's like 50-50, right? Mm-hmm. Someone who's amazing at drawing and can't hit their deadlines, useless. Someone who's can hit deadlines and literally can't draw is not going to be a very good designer. So, but a balance of those two, and maybe, if you're a B in both of those columns, you're way better than an A+ with who can't meet a deadline. So I think the advice is like, make a portfolio of what you're good at. Try to speak in 6 or 7 things. Like, you need to be able. This is how portfolio watching goes. You go flip, 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 or on a website you go click, click, click. And if you haven't wowed them in 4 pieces, throw it all out. Way better to have 2 amazing drawings than 10 bad ones, or 6 really good pieces or 30 bad ones. Doesn't matter. Or even if you have 6 good pieces and 25 bad ones, you're going to get judged on the 25. And then beyond that, sometimes it's like, whatever you do to get your foot in the door. Go make sandwiches at the company. Go like offer to clean it. I know what's her name? Ilana Pena, who did Diary of a Future President, that Disney Plus show, was a PA on TripTank, a show I worked on. And then, now has like a multi-film deal at every studio at like 30. You know what I mean? So like, and she was like, I remember thinking like, this person's cool and they're doing a good job, but you don't know what they're capable of. They're not writing. They weren't writing for me. They were just kind of around the studio. Yeah. And it's like, wait, that's the person who has that TV show? And it's because they just were willing to kind of be in the room and just keep just essentially wandering around. Do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this?
Yeah, I had a classmate from Sheridan that, we were in Canada, and he found a way to get to LA. And ended up just going to DreamWorks repeatedly until he got a test.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this persistence. I mean, don't scare them away.
Yeah. We wait until dark. They were walking to their car.
You have a test? But he was persistent and wowed them with, how much he's willing to work on these tests.
Yeah.
Ended up getting his foot in the door and still has a wonderful career.
Yeah. Someone who's willing to stay until they get it right is very valuable.
And, that's part of this contest is like, yeah, you're developing art. We don't have tons of time to make it portfolio ready. But really, the majority of this is, can you get a project done from start to finish?
Yeah.
And can you work with a team? Can you meet it under deadline and settle, like you were saying earlier, find a way to compromise so that everybody on the team enjoys it. And it's just kind of like all in one, get you through to the finish line.
Yep.
Any change to getting that foot in the door when productions are going more and more remote?
I actually think that has opened up a lot of possibilities of like where you can live. So like the last show I worked on previous to where I am now, one of the main designers was like in Toronto and we were making the show in LA. So I think like, there of the one good thing about social media is that it's really easy to set up a good portfolio. And then while the rest of social media is destroying your entire existence, the portfolio that you've created on social media can actually help you. So as Twitter's destroying us, your online portfolio can be a huge help in getting your foot in the door somewhere. Because all it takes is like, I got offered a job based on an animation I did on my Instagram because someone was doing a show about the same character.
Nice.
So I think I think that's where it's pretty important to have some kind of online portfolio if you're trying to break in so that you can just poke somebody with a web link, whether it's an Instagram. Instagram's great because it's just super easy and you can like straight up message the person. I hired 2 board artists, sight unseen, got them a contract in a day just because their boards were so great and someone said, hey, check this person out. And then, it has to go through a lot of hoops, right? To, get it, show it to all the producers and all this and that. And you send them the Instagram link. They're like, great.
Makes it easy.
Well, yeah, I think it makes it really easy these days. The only real bummer is a lot of people are doing the job. So you got to like get cut through the noise and the industry ebbs and flows. But other than that, like it's pretty easy these days to kind of bug the right people.
Love it.
Don't ask for stuff though. You got to just kind of go, hey. But if you go, hey, can I have a job? Then quickly you're like, you make people feel.
Yeah.
The cringe. You don't want to make anyone cringe.
Don't ask for stuff and don't follow people out to their cars. Those are the 2 lessons we want to impart.
Yeah, that's just good life in general. Good advice.
Just avoid those 2 things. Well, Mike Roberts, this has been fascinating. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Busy schedule in your garage.
Well, it is. In fairness, it's 9:30 on a Friday. It can't be that busy. Wait, is anyone from Wexford actually watching?
That's a good question. If you are from Wexford and you're watching, please speak up or post in social media and let Mike Roberts know, a Wexford alum, how you are doing. And maybe you can convince him to come talk to your class one day.
They're like, sure. Thanks.
All right, Mike Roberts, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Ben is typing one thing before I say goodbye. Ben, is there anything else? Thank you, Mike. Awesome.
Bye, everybody.
We'll see you soon.
Good luck.
Bye, everybody.